today we are here in our annual and perennial field, and this is a new piece of land that we are cultivating this year. When we first tilled this space to break the hard pan, we thought that that would be enough to kill all the weeds, and I thought that I could just companion plant with sweet alyssum to keep the weed pressure down. What I quickly discovered was that the sweet alyssum overcrowds my plants and the weeds are growing like crazy. So I reached out to Farmer's Friend and they sent me some of their pre-burned landscape fabric, and I have their 2, 3, and 4 whole landscape fabric, and I want to show you today how we are pivoting this season to plant our annual flowers so that we can fight the weed pressure as we're getting started at our new farm. So right here, this is my row of lisianthus. I planted these about a month ago, and a few weeks after, I thought that I could get away by planting sweet alyssum in between. But the problem is that the sweet alyssum is growing so much faster than my plants, and it is crowding them out and blocking the sunlight. So I'm having to go through and take out much of the sweet alyssum, and I'm still weeding. There's still tons of weeds, especially the clover that's showing up in this space. So when I discovered that this was becoming a problem, I reached out to Farmer's Friend and asked about their quick plant fabric. So now I want to show you how we are using that to solve our heavy weed pressure. Here is an example of one of our rows that we started cultivating without landscape fabric, and you can see how high the weed pressure is. We have so many weeds trying to grow, and this row was our final straw when we realized that we were going to need landscape fabric or we were going to be battling weeds all season. So now I am standing where we have planted the Farmer's Friend Quick Plant landscape fabric. Right next to me, this is some status that I have planted. It is already growing so quickly, and the weed pressure is so minimal because there are pre-burned 3-inch holes that really are only big enough for the plants to grow through. So today what I want to do is I want to show you how I roll out the landscape fabric, how I hold it down. We get really, really heavy winds here. And then also, it's a little bit trickier when you're laying down landscape fabric to irrigate. So I'm also going to show you how I irrigate this section of the field. So I hope you find this helpful. So I am going to be rolling out another one of the Farmer's Friend Quick Plant fabric, landscape fabric. This is a 3-hole one. I'm actually going to be planting dahlia plugs into this for our U-pick. And so in order to do this, I have these 12-inch landscape staples and a hammer. Fortunately, it's not too windy. I'm going to just roll this out. I used a measuring tape, and my rows are 36 inches wide with the T-post, and then right in the very center is where I line up the middle of the landscape fabric, and I'm just going to roll this out. And about every 5 feet, I like to put a landscape staple to hold this down. And so I always put the landscape staples on the side here. And I have found that only 12-inch is enough to hold them into the ground. We have a lot of wind. 6-inch staples will rip right out, but these 12-inch will hold the landscape fabric into the ground. Okay, so I'm going to roll this out some more. Okay, so I'm going to make sure this is nice and straight. Grab my landscape staple. Always be careful that your hand is out of the way. I have accidentally hammered my hand a few times doing this, and it does not feel good. I actually one time went to the emergency room thinking I broke my hand. I bruised it so badly. Okay, let's roll out some more. All right, so the landscape fabric is down. It's time to add our irrigation. So I use drip line, and so I need these different connectors. I have the one that's going to connect into the main line, and this is going to close off the line. And then I use this tool right here to punch through this 1 1/4 inch tubing here. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a rock, and I like to line this up at the edge of my circles. And this is actually the hardest part, is you don't want to let go once you start making the hole, and you need to apply quite a bit of pressure and just wiggle back and forth. It takes a minute for it to go through here, or not a minute, but a few seconds. There we go. And then it's super important, once you've pushed through, you're going to have that plastic stuck in here. I dump that plastic back into my bucket so I don't leave plastic in the field. And then I'm going to put this through here. If I don't empty out that plastic, it's going to be really hard to cut the next hole. So now I'm going to add my next one, and I'm going to line it up right here. And again, I'm going to just push against here. I'm applying pressure on both sides of the irrigation line. And this is always easiest to do when it's warm outside. There we go. Put another one of these through here. You literally just twist them in until they snap. And I'll open up the lines now because we're going to hook up the irrigation. And then our last one is going to go right here. Sometimes you have to really twist. There we go. Put one more of these in. I always have a bucket of irrigation supplies with me because you never know when you're going to need them. All right, so the next step is now going to be to get our drip tape run all the way along the irrigation fabric. I don't have anyone here helping me today, so it's going to just be me. So I'm literally going to unwind this and walk it down the row. And once I get these walked out, I will take you through the next step of connecting all of this together. The first line is out. You'll see there's these little spots where the water comes out of the emitters. I want to cut in between them so I don't cut through one of the emitters. And then I'm going to need to open this up. Sometimes my scissors will help me get this open. I kind of just squeeze. And then I've got to push this into here. You want to get it as far in as you can. And while you're applying pressure, you're going to twist to tighten that on. And then it's time to get our next irrigation line going. And so I'm going to put the end cap on before I walk it down. And these are always a little tight to get on. I remember in my early days, I was constantly having these blow off and having huge puddles of water. I still walk the field every day looking for irrigation line blowouts. But you want to make sure that's on nice and tight. once you turn the water on, you'll want to check that again. And so with these, I use the 6-inch irrigation staples, and I have to apply them every couple holes on the landscape fabric so they don't shift around on the landscape fabric, because you want to make sure the water gets into each of these holes here so that your plant gets watered. But I'm going to go ahead and pull the rest of these out, and then I will come back and show you when it's all finished and set up. Okay, so here we are. This is the row that you watched me lay down, and I also put the irrigation on top of the landscape fabric. This row I have planted dahlia cuttings, and these ones were still pretty small, so they were in small enough pots that I was able to fit them through these 3-inch pre-burned holes. And this is also going to be part of where we do some special U-pick events. So I wanted to separate these dahlias from my other dahlias so that I don't have to worry about sanitization on these. These are plugs that I'm not going to save. I'm not going to overwinter them. So I'm not worried about virus because I'm going to use these completely separate, and I will sanitize still between every cutting in my main dahlia field. But this way I can have people out to the farm and I don't have to worry about them using bleach in the field and sanitizing between every cut. So I planted these dahlia cuttings 10 inches apart. This is the 3-hole landscape fabric that has 10-inch spacing. It was super easy to roll out the roll, even in the wind, using the 12-inch landscape fabric. And then, as you can see, I have these 6-inch stakes, and I put them in the holes right next to the plant. And so what I'm doing is about every second to third hole in the landscape fabric, I am putting a 6-inch staple down to hold this in place. And I will tell you that as your irrigation drip lines expand and contract, you're going to find that your lines will start to move. So almost every single day, I do have to check my irrigation lines. I gently tug on the ends so that I straighten them out, because what you want to do is you want to make sure that your drip lines are up against every plant, especially on the landscape fabric, because what you don't want to have happen is you don't want them to not get that important water that they need, because it's a little bit harder for the water to reach them with the landscape fabric. But I'm super excited to watch these grow right here, and I hope you found this helpful.